This is a recording of the San Francisco Dance Film Festival's interview with the directors of the animated feature film Coppelia, Jeff Tudor, Stephen de Beul, and Ben Tesseur. And they're the team that made up the making of this film. But the film actually has a longer history than that. The Coppelia, this version of Coppelia combines animation and live action to retell the story of the classic opera from the 1870s of a love story between two characters, Swan and Franz, who are jeopardized by the evil Dr. Coppelius and his protege, Coppelia, the robotic Coppelia. And the film has a world-class cast of dancers, including Michaela de Prince, Daniel Camargo, Vito Mazzeo, and Dame Darcy Bussell. And what's interesting about it is that the film mixes live action dance with animated environments and animated characters. And so it's a pleasure to talk to you three today and dig into, I'd like to know, first of all, the history of this film and how this came about, how this dance performance came about. It's not the traditional version of Coppelia by any stretch. Could one of you, perhaps Jeff, give me an insight into that?
Yeah, I mean, the whole idea to make this movie came about when in 2008 we saw the theatrical ballet production in Amsterdam of Ted Branson's Coppelia. And the scenery and the setting that he put was very cartoony. And we just thought that this would make a wonderful atmospheric cross-genre movie.
I see. And was the storyline of the film is basically the same as the Dutch National Ballet production then? Is that true?
It's basically the same. We rewrote it and reimagined it, but it takes very much the same synopsis of the ballet. I
see. Okay. Because it's interesting. It touches on two very interesting themes, I would say. One, of course, which is especially relevant this week here in the United States with revelations about the impact of Facebook on young teenagers and in general, the impact of social media on politics. And, you know, you were years ahead of your time in terms of discussing these issues in this ballet, no?
Yeah, I mean, I think we tell this, we have a very gentle message, really. I mean, we're not against cosmetic surgery in our film, but what we're gently trying to persuade people is maybe be happy in yourself. And we very subtly give that message. And we hope that younger people who watch it can just feel a little bit more comfortable and not having to change to fit a prescribed look. And
I see.
Gently tell that message. And of course, there's no dialogue, so it has to be quite subtle how we do it.
One of the things that fascinated me in the film was the way you had several scenes with people looking into either phones or mirrors and seeing this improved or idealized version of themselves. And I was curious how that came about, because your animators had to basically mirror or mimic the exact motions of the live action actors. How did that work in terms of direction?
Ben, do you want to?
Difficult questions are always for me. Talking about the reflections, we used a software program. So the animators used the live action footage that we shot on set, or for some actors, we shot it afterwards. So they used the live action footage and they only had to tweak it a little and touch it up to fit the animation style.
So it was something that sort of tracked the faces of the live action and then mapped the animated face back onto it?
Yes, exactly.
Oh, very interesting.
For the faces and the bodies, especially the bodies deformed a lot, so they had to animate more. But they tracked really well the expressions of the characters.
I see. And so in going back and looking at the stage version of this ballet, what did you change in the course of thinking about bringing this into becoming a film?
One of the main changes or questions we asked ourselves was, who's the main character of the story, of our story? Because for us in the stage play, it was not really clear if it was or Swan or Franz. So we made a rather radical choice. Okay, we tell Swan's story. That's our main character, and she's going through her emotional changes. So we'll follow her. So we rewrote the stage play to a screenplay following Swan, telling Swan's story.
But what you see on stage is there's a lot of dancers. There's like sometimes 30 or 40 dancers, and they're all dancing their piece. And as a spectator, you kind of choose your own story. You pick your own character in the ballet piece, and then you try to follow that throughout the whole piece. What we did, we decided, okay, let's follow Swan, and we reconstructed the whole story as dancers. Like, okay, this is the story we want to tell. It's a different arc in the storytelling also than the classic ballet version.
The movie was totally re-choreographed, bespoke for the movie. There's no dance from the stage that's in the movie. It's all completely new choreography by Ted Branson. So that was an important point, that we completely re-choreographed the whole ballet.
The other problem that you faced was you were shooting this film during the COVID pandemic.
Pillar of the big production part was the live action part. So that was just before the pandemic. We managed to finish the editing of the live action footage by the end of 2019. And then we had to start up the second big pillar of the production was the animation part.
I can imagine that it must have been a learning process for the animators to understand how to communicate through dance.
Yeah, so we were lucky again. Sorry, Jeff. We were lucky again that just in the beginning of the pandemic, the few animators or the lead animators could come over to Belgium to work closely with us for a few weeks, and then they could guide the animation team in Germany.
That's always a good idea, to have people on the set who are later on going to be doing the animation and the visual effects, certainly. Of course, I assume that all this was shot against green screen. Is that correct?
Yeah,
all the live action.
All the live action parts where you see the dancers performing or acting, everything was filmed against blue screen or green screen. Yeah.
And how was that for the dancers? Is that an unusual
not only for
are they used to interacting with sets? Obviously, many of the props that they handled were live.
But I would not say difficult, but different. But also for us, like, if there's no set, you have to imagine where the bike shop is, where the juice bar is. You have to explain to the dancers, look, you're standing in the middle of a town square, and over there's a bike shop. There's somebody coming out over there, and on your left side there's a big clinic, and the doctor is watching over you. Okay.
Yes.
So you have to imagine it's quite interesting, we would say.
One of the challenges was the amount of green screen and the amount of yellow screen and blue screen we actually had to have. That was a big learning curve for us, is that you need far more space than you actually think you need. And that was the challenge, is to actually find the space in Amsterdam where we shot it, to find the studios big enough to shoot it. It was quite a challenge.
Especially for the exterior shots. Like for the interior shots, we had some sets, like the kitchen, for example. We had the basic furniture also painted in yellow key, so the entire crew and the dancers could really see the volumes and the distances of the space, but they could see the window and a door. But for the exterior shots, it's just a green or yellow wall and floor, and there's nothing else.
I would imagine that for transforming a ballet from the stage into film, you have issues of continuity. When a character goes off to the left, they have to enter on the right. You have to think about camera placement, and you have to think quite a bit about the geography of your set. And when you're doing that against green screen, that can be very confusing, right?
It was very confusing, but we storyboarded the whole film, the whole movie. We storyboarded it up front. And we worked with floor plans of interior, exterior sets where this is the camera, we're in this position. And every scene was worked out in detail like that.
Yeah, but when we do animation production.
Sorry, Ben. We actually built little maquettes occasionally, little models, so we could just keep an eye on where we actually were physically in different sets.
We approached the entire shooting process really as an animation production. So we wrote a script, and then from the script we make a storyboard, so a drawn version of the script. And then we make what we call an animatic in the animation world. So we place all the little drawings on a timeline, so we can see the length of each shot and the action. So it's always in an animation production, it's quite important because you know the length and the action, etc. But also for this production, we could see, okay, this character has to leave right screen, and then we pick him or her up, left screen, and so on. So we tackled already a lot of possible problems in the pre-production stage. So we knew exactly who was going to do what once we were on set. We also did quite some rehearsals with the dancers up front.
I know that in animation, there is the value of the silhouette of a character on screen and the sort of pantomime movement that one creates. And I would imagine that also exists in dance, but of course, choosing your camera angles also means getting your dancers to face exactly the right way so that their movement communicates strongly. Is that something that you worked on with them? How did that enter into the formula?
We did a lot of, like as Ben said, a lot of rehearsals in studio to try and find the best angles to actually film the dance. And of course, as you know, there is different ways of filming dance, and more an aesthetic way of positioning the camera so the dance looks great, or it looks like they're jumping higher, or they physically look better in balletic movements. But also we had a lot of time rehearsing with them of how we wanted them to be on camera. And that was a big challenge for them as theatrical dancers who were used to dancing in big opera houses, that we were doing some very intimate acting with them, you know, in the lens. And so that was a big rehearsal, and we did lots of talking with them about how did they want to appear, how did they want to act. We discussed a lot of silent movie acting. We always discussed that they were actors, not dancers, so they got the feel of what they were trying to do. And yeah, it was a process really, but they were amazing to work with, and they took to it very quickly on set, which was a blessing.
Was this the same cast as the Dutch National Ballet production? No.
We brought in different dancers from different parts of the world. But
I know it was a very international.
Dancers for Dutch National.
It was a very international cast that you put together.
Yes.
How did that process come together?
We were very lucky. Everyone we wanted some very well established stars in ballet, and everyone who we asked, we got legends like Irek Makhmadov, who's a legend in the Bolshoi Ballet and in the Royal Ballet in London. We asked him to play a role in it. He agreed, and Dame Darcy Bussell, who played the Mayoress, she agreed to be in it. She's from the Royal Ballet. She's a legend in London, and everyone we asked. We had a few Dutch stars as well, and a few Dutch acting stars and Belgian stars. So we were very lucky. We got everyone we asked to, and they all agreed to be in the movie.
So you put together this international cast, and in particular, you had a young rising ballet star, Michaela de Prince. How did that work with her, and what was it like having someone who's less established but rising in the world of dance to work with?
Well, the three of us saw her play the role of Swan in Coppelia, in the Ted Branson's production of Coppelia in Amsterdam. We were struck with how she lit up the stage. And after a few meetings with her, we really realized she was perfect for the role. She's got such a personality, and a very interesting person as well. Her background was very interesting as well. She had a lot of points of view about how she wanted to portray herself in the movie. And but she was really fantastic to work with. She was she just lights up the lens when you point the camera at her. She's very, very interesting person.
And for her, working in this medium with green screen and all this technology that was being applied, that must have been new for her too.
Yeah, I suppose it was new for her, but we could not really tell because she's very natural. For her and the other dancers, I think in the beginning they had a bit of difficulties to work with the camera because they're used to play everything big in the theater, but now they had to make it really small when they have the camera stuck to their face to film a close-up, for example. So we talked about it quite often, and we said we always try to come up with an idea. Okay, Michaela, how would you react? You as a as a person, not as a dancer, but how would you feel, or what would you do? And then she would do what she does, and it looks great on the screen.
Let's speak for a minute about the music. This is not the original score for Coppelia. This is a score that was composed by Maurizio Malagnini, who we in the US know as the composer for shows that we see on public television, The Paradise or Call of the Midwife.
Yeah.
I assume this came out of the Dutch production.
No.
But did you, oh, it did not?
No, this was specifically commissioned for this movie.
Oh, fascinating.
Then Steph and I, we really didn't want a ballet theatrical score. We wanted a movie score.
Mm-hmm.
So we decided to completely rewrite the music from beginning to end.
Since we're not using dialogue, we wanted so the body language of the dances is very important. But if also the music tells the story or tries to help the story, it's layer on layer on layer. And for this this version of Coppelia, it worked fantastic with the music of Maurizio.
Yes, it's very romantic and yet very expressive at the same time. Mm-hmm.
Yes.
I remember a very, very early meeting with the producers where we had like the kickoff for our part of the production, where we said, okay, we really want to do this film, but we want some freedom. So we want to get rid of all dialogue. We want to tell everything through ballet and through ballet. And we want to change the music. We want an original film score. And they said, all right, you can have it. So we said, all right, let's do it. And then we took it from there.
So how does it work when you have three directors? It's actually not unusual in animated films to have multiple directors. What is different from project to project is the way in which the responsibilities are split up. How did you decide to work together, and who took charge of what?
Well, we made a decision really early on that we weren't going to split anything. We were going to make everything together, all decisions together. And so we all aspects of the film, from design to screenwriting to actually live action directing and animation directing, we did together. We didn't put different responsibilities on to different people. We all have different attributes and different skills, but we did everything together.
Mm-hmm. I see. Okay. So you didn't even split up different sections of the film, different scenes. You just everything worked together.
Yeah.
So. And you had two animation studios that you worked with, is that correct?
But there was one animation studio in Germany. They did all the animation, and then we had another studio in Belgium who did the compositing and the VFX animation. So all the character animation of the assistants in the clinic and Coppelia was done in Germany, and then the VFX part and the compositing afterwards was done in Belgium.
And that happens more and more these days, that we see multiple venues doing this. Jeff, I get the sense that you have a strong dance background, but not necessarily an animation background.
I have no animation background. This was my first animation movie, so this was a big learning curve for me.
And sometimes it's better to come into these things with no preconceived, established ideas to make it the best it can be in the format that you envision, rather than be stuck with the rules or attributes. And Stephen, Ben, what was your background in animation?
So we studied animation together years ago in a school in Brussels. And we always had the dream or the idea to start our own studio. We're basically stop motion animation people. Mm-hmm. So that's what we did, but we also directed CGI, smaller things like series and commercials and stuff. And there's also a lot of interest in dance, in movement, since animation is like a rhythm and movement. It's very close to dance. You see, it's so the interest was there. And we met Jeff with his brilliant idea, and we said, "Okay, let's do it."
We spoke earlier about the similarities with pantomime, with choosing the position of characters that make animation work. So Ben, tell me more. How did you come to work in animation?
Well, I studied together with Stephen. We were at the same film school in Brussels, and me too. I cannot draw good enough, and I cannot work on a computer good enough. and I like to touch things and work with real stuff and real light. So I started doing stop motion animation from a very early stage at school. And so then after graduating, I started up a company together with Steven, a stop motion studio. And since then we are also directing together. So we always direct as a duo, usually stop motion or stop motion related productions.
Can we speak for a moment about the art direction and how the CG environments and the props were designed? Did you have a single art director working on this project?
So we worked with several art directors in the pre-production, and then at a certain point we started working with Erik Fokkens, who is a Dutch art director, who helped us really to find the right tone for the film. Mm-hmm. But then at a certain point in the production, his job was taken over by a German art director.
I see. Because the film sort of reveals two very different worlds, right? There's the world and the town, the village that Coppelia lives in, and then there's the world of Dr. Coppelius's lab, and they're very very different. And I didn't know if it was the same person designing everything or how you approach that.
But we had the three of us had a very clear idea that we wanted to make a big difference between Swan's world and the Doctor's world, and we wanted to put this as extreme as possible. So for the Swan's world, round shapes, warm colors, also in the music, warm music, and and warm sounds. And for Dr. Coppelius, straight lines, cold colors, and electronical music. So we, for the art direction and for the music, we tried to create those two worlds, but they have to be able to come together in one universe. So we had the same art director, art people working on both worlds at the end.
And the laboratory of Dr. Coppelius reminded me a bit of another Dr. Caligari from the 1930s, a bit of that German expressionist look in the art direction. Was that also a reference you were seeking?
We even had some Caligari references for Swan's world, and I think that's one of the points where those two worlds unite in a way. So the forced perspectives, we have them in Swan's world and in the Doctor's world. But in the Doctor's world, it's all straight and hard, and in Swan's world, it's all rounded and organic.
Oh, fascinating. And the laboratory assistants the robotic laboratory assistants that Dr. Coppelius has, how were those created and animated? Did you have dancers create movement that the animators could then follow, or how did you think? Because they are totally computer generated characters, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
Yeah, they were all based upon dancers actually in blue suits, who plotted the movements and did all the choreography, and then the animators worked from that.
Oh, I see.
There's even the scene what we call the freaky doll dance. It's a part where Swan discovers all these prototypes of Coppelia when they're dancing in a very strange way.
Yes.
Even those were danced by one of the dancers as a reference for the animators.
I see. And the purpose of the blue suit was to do what exactly?
Was to give a reference, not only for the camera, where we were going to put the camera, but for the animators to just have a specific style of movement.
And were you using techniques like motion capture at all, or was it purely eyeball imitation of what they saw on screen and imitating them?
Yeah, we played in the beginning of the production, the pre-production. We had a moment where we were thinking about using motion capture, but we were afraid, the three of us, that it would become maybe too perfect in a way, or too technical, and we wanted to have a more 2D approach to the whole. So we put the motion capture idea away in the fridge.
And how many of the animators are now taking up dance as a profession?
I think maybe we put them off dance forever. No, they actually enjoyed the process. We did many occasions, especially in Germany, where we actually had them doing ballet movements themselves physically, so they could get a feel of what they were trying to do and learn a little bit the language of the ballet. But it was fun for them to do, and eventually, in the end, they became very very professional at knowing how a dancer should stand, and they were actually using the language themselves. It was very interesting to watch their progression of talking about dance and specifically ballet. It was really fun to watch.
So, in looking back in retrospect, you know, those of us in the audience, we look at the film as a finished, polished piece of work. But it's not always clear to us what the big challenges were, what the big problems were that you had to solve in the course of doing this.
In a way, we are in Europe, we are used to work internationally, because usually we work with international co-productions to be able to finance productions. But even now for this production, we work with within 3 to 4 countries. And we had the pandemic to deal with at the same time. So we had a lot of distance between all the different teams, between the design team, between the animators, between the dancers and us directors. So there was a lot of effort going into communication.
And Jeff, for you as someone coming into animation for the first time, there must have been a lot to learn, but also some interesting discoveries.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose the most difficult thing for me, and for all 3 of us, was budget. As I suppose every director in the world, maybe not you, Ralph, but with your big movies. But
no, there's never enough money.
Exactly. So I mean, we had a relatively small budget with big ideas, and we wanted to make a Disney-esque movie, and suppose restricting ourselves with our camera movements. And because everything costs, as you know, every time we move the camera, it costs money. So that was, I think, the biggest learning curve for me was how to actually fulfill our dream for the movie. It was a difficult process, but I think we did a good thing in the end.
And Stephen, for you, you know, what was the experience of this film like in making it, and how do you hope that audiences respond to it, particularly a film like this with no dialogue? You know, must have been an interesting problem to solve. Obviously, as you mentioned, Maurizio helped you quite a bit with the music, and the dancers are very expressive. Were there other storytelling ideas that you came away with that helped you tell a story without dialogue?
Not especially, but what I would like to learn from the audiences, or see what the audience does, is when they watch the movie, it takes like maybe 1 or 2 minutes to get into our way of telling the story. Like you see from the beginning, you see an animated world, and you see an animated character, and you see a live action dancer. There's no dialogue. You see it's all about dance and movement. If an audience gets behind those 2 first minutes, I think we can take them the whole way through the movie, and I hope that's something we can also show to people who are not only there because of the ballet, or because of that it reaches another audience also than the ballet people.
I know what you mean. Every animated film creates its own world and its own rules of that world and its own physics of that world. You know, the world of Mickey Mouse is very different from the world of Roadrunner or other characters that we know. And so it is about convincing the audience to enter that world with you and to accept the way the world looks. I agree. Yeah. And Jeff, you've had a lot of experience with putting dance on film, and in the context of that, how do you view this effort?
Well, I mean, it was a totally different process to what I'm used to, obviously, because I'm my previous life was a multicam director filming live performance, and what you film is what you get. You mean, it's just live, and so I said this was a great experience in actually working very closely with the artists and asking their opinion about what they wanted to do and how they wanted to be on screen. Was a great experience, and I think it's also a unique experience for them as dancers, because they're not usually asked about how they want to appear on camera.
How many days total did it take to shoot all the live action?
We had a full month of July 2019.
I see.
24, 25, 30 days or something, I think.
Yes,
31,
I see.
In the first week of July, so we were shooting and we received a message from production that we were moving on too slow, so that we had to, or to speed up or to skip shots or scenes. So yeah, we had quite a stressful moment. We talked to the team, but everybody was already full force. So we reworked our storyboard during the first week of the shoot. So one of us would be working while we were shooting. One of us would be deleting or combining actions from 3 shots into one to try to tell the same story, the same action, but in an easier way. So we reworked the entire storyboard in our first week of shooting to be able to finish the shoot on time.
That's why, Ralph, I was so happy when we had this edit lock. And the story was told that it was supposed to be told. So
yes, absolutely. No, from my experience working on Toy Story, we had the same issues. We had to combine shots. We had to figure out how to economize. It doesn't matter what size budget you have. You're always facing many of the same problems. There's never enough time or money to fully achieve the vision you want. And so it's about working out the vision that you can get. Well, listen, thank you very much for your time. This is a fascinating production. Jeff Tudor, Steven de Beul, Ben Tesseur. It's been a pleasure talking with you. And the San Francisco Dance Film Festival is going to be showing the North American theatrical premiere of this production of Coppelia on October 16th at the Cowell Theater at Fort Mason in San Francisco. So I encourage all of you to take a look at this very interesting, very innovative mixture of live action and animation. And thanks for coming today. And it's been a great conversation.
Thank you.
Ralph, it's been an honor speaking to you.
It's a pleasure.
Thanks to the Film Festival as well.